Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, June 1st. Happy June to all those celebrating June Day. Happy June to you. June 1st, 2018, in case you forgot what year it was. And a little bit of extra noise and getting the microphone set up in case those of you who were settling in with your headphones wanted to be extremely uncomfortable. I thought I would indulge you in that. Where are we going to go today? God only knows. And he's not talking. All right. Well, anyway, at least not to me at the moment. Although if it changes, I'll let you know and I'll start running for Congress. And everyone can get ready for that. And I don't want anybody to start cheering for that to happen either. I don't need that kind of problem in my life. And I'm not talking about running for Congress, quite honestly. God, keep it to yourself. Just for a little while. Anyway, long enough to get me through the show. Anyway, although if you have some suggestions, by all means, use the KITM hashtag to tweet them to me. It's better than burning a bush. That's all I can say. There's really no point in doing anything like that anymore, and it's wasteful and it's bad for the environment, though the bush is not consumed, and so I assume that means that the carbon isn't released into the atmosphere. I guess you could do anything. Who am I to tell you? Look, this whole thing is getting off track. We could certainly focus on something more down to earth today. Why don't we try doing that? Why don't we get back on track? I've lost control of the show already. To my co-pilot, thank you. Bill, all the way from Portland, Maine, lets everybody know that Daily Kos is live now. Not that there's anything he could have done about it, what with God insisting on it and all. It is Ethical Dilemma Friday. And today, Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, discusses the pros and cons of peeing on Dinesh Derp Souza if he was on fire. Yes, I did. I considered that yesterday. I thought that was, I hadn't realized that was an option at first. But I learned about that not long ago. It's a colorful phrase that somebody said, although I was offered a more colorful alternative to it. And I had heard it before, somebody saying, I don't know where it comes from, just from wanting to be colorful and people saying, that person, I don't like him. You remember yesterday we were trying to decide whether Dinesh D'Souza required any attention at all. He's a super minor figure in all of this stuff, but, whatever. He made the news. And people say, I wouldn't waste my time on him. They say things like, I wouldn't piss on him if he was on fire, which is supposed to be kind of like, I wouldn't even waste something so, useless, I guess, as urine on that person if they were on fire. I wouldn't help them out if they were on fire, even if it required peeing on them. This struck me as nonsensical, as I don't think I could think of a good reason to skip the opportunity, particularly if there was a good excuse for peeing on Dinesh D'Souza. And quite honestly, I don't see why he should have to be on fire about that. And then people said, well, I would let him burn. Earnest Twitter actually offered me answers as to, well, why wouldn't you opt to urinate on a burning Dinesh D'Souza? Well, this way he burns. He continues to burn, and that's a good thing. And that's awfully cruel, for one thing. But another thing is, if you were that kind of person, you could light him back on fire afterwards, too. And then you're both comfortable and he burns. And I don't know. I'm not really certain where that came from. Somebody said that a more colorful version of the phrase was that I wouldn't piss down his throat if his guts were on fire. Which, at least there we say, I'm not even certain that would be effective, quite honestly. But, that seems like an odd way to start the show. And it wasn't how I meant to start the show, but I was glad to have that opportunity. Anyway, thanks to Bill for reminding me of one of the few things that gave me a little bit of fun during yesterday afternoon. All right, let's see. What else are we going to round up here? Oh, dear. Well, a couple of interesting gun fail stories coming across the transom here, but look at this. Look at this. Here's a nice follow-up on something we speculated on yesterday, right? I'm confused because half the show was taped and half was live. How did that work out, by the way? I got all thumbs up from Justice on that one, and I think that one actually worked out here. Kate Sherrill sends me the tweet of Rabia O'Chowdhury, who tweets as Rabia, R-A-B-I-A, squared, for reasons. And she says in her tweet, "Great, there will be tapes," which, Lordy, we hope there were. Now, Rabia is retweeting the tweet of one Robert McGuire. Not McGuire, but M-A-G-U-I-R-E. And Robert McGuire, I'm going to go through the whole chain of custody here, is one who tracks secret political money for open secrets. There we are. That gives you some idea of where he's from. A federal study, he says, and in the chain of custody on these things, I like to give it out. It's half the story, and it's half the show. A federal study written up in the Washington Post, and here's the article on it in case we choose to share it. A federal study found signs that surveillance devices for intercepting cell phone calls and texts were operating near the White House and other sensitive locations in the Washington area last year. That's true, although lots of things are in the area of the White House. And it's, I guess, before even reading the article, I would tell you it's by no means certain that the target was the White House. And I think the White House has a little bit of shielding on that. I've been inside the White House and found it extraordinarily difficult, if not absolutely impossible, to use your cell phone, at least from within certain areas of it. And I'm not certain that, that means anything, but I did find it to be the case. And I have found it similarly difficult to use one's cell phone in close proximity to the president, no matter where that is. I've even found it to be the case at campaign events in the past at which the president is appearing. And I don't know whether that has to do with technology suppressing the ability to use the phones, as I have heard rumored that it is, or whether high demand for people texting out, "I can see the president from here," or whatever is what does it. I don't know. Let me take a look at this article, because why not? This gives some structure and direction to the show. This is, oh my goodness, it's today's newspaper. How do you like that? It's been so long since we read something from today's newspaper without Greg bringing it to us. Signs of sophisticated cell phone spying found near White House, U.S. officials say. That's, of course, problematic because you'll remember that the president is a blabbermouth and insists on using unsecured cell phones. Craig Timberg has written this piece up. A federal study, and you know how we love those, found signs that surveillance devices for intercepting cell phone calls and texts were operating near the White House and other sensitive locations in the Washington area last year. We remember yesterday we read the story of some speculation about how easy it might be to exploit known vulnerabilities of standard cell phones, even the president's, and what might be getting out that way. I have no doubt that he's an enormous security risk and that he lets things slip all the time. Let's take a look at this, though. A Department of Homeland Security program discovered evidence of the surveillance devices called IMSI catchers. I'm sure I'll get a rundown on that from those of you who are tech savvy. These things were found as part of federal testing last year, according to a letter from DHS to Senator Ron Wyden on May 22nd. The letter didn't specify what entity operated the devices and left open the possibility that there would be alternative explanations for the suspicious cellular signals by the seashore collected by the federal testing program last year. This is a very vague phrasing, the federal testing program. The discovery bolsters years of independent research suggesting that foreign intelligence agencies use sophisticated interception technology to spy on officials working within the hub of federal power, hub-o power, in the nation's capital. Experts in surveillance technology say that IMSI catchers, sometimes known by one popular brand name, Stingrays, I know those, Empty Wheel tells me all about those, are a standard part of the toolkit for many foreign intelligence services, and our own, including for such geopolitical rivals as Russia and China. Could just be us, though. A DHS spokesman confirmed the contents of the letter to Wyden but declined further comment. This admission from DHS bolsters my concern about stingrays and other spying devices being used to spy on Americans' phones. Wyden said in a statement on Thursday, not even worried so much that it would be one particular American like the president, but I guess that's a possibility too, given what we read yesterday. Given the reports of rogue spying devices being identified near the White House and other government facilities, I fear that foreign intelligence services could target the president and other senior officials. There you are. It's all laid out for you. Now, the DHS letter came in response to a meeting last month in which Wyden pushed for a more aggressive federal response to cellular system insecurity. Good luck. IMSI catchers are widely used by local, state, and federal police, as well as foreign intelligence agencies. The devices work by simulating cell towers to trick nearby phones into connecting, allowing the IMSI catchers to collect calls, texts, and data streams. Unlike some other forms of cell phone interception, IMSI catchers must be near targeted devices to work. When they are in range, these thingamajigs also can deliver malicious software, cool, to targeted devices for the purpose of stealing information stored on them or conducting longer-term monitoring of communications. I don't know what you would get off of Trump's phone. The best thing you can get probably his texts and listening to what he has to say. Other than that, I assume, maybe doodles of naked ladies or something would be on there. I don't know what the president puts on his phone. Not too much with those little fingers. The same May 22nd letter revealed that DHS was aware of reports that a global cellular network messaging system called SS7. How about that? Boy, were we on the ball, eh? Well, it was being used to spy on Americans through their cell phones. Such surveillance, which can intercept calls and locate cell phones from anywhere in the world, are sometimes used in conjunction with IMSI catchers. I assume they're up to date on that at ZTE. Here's another three-letter outfit, ESD America, a defense and law enforcement technology contractor based in Las Vegas, why not, has reported detecting IMSI catchers throughout the Washington area while conducting tests for private clients. The company, which said it has federal contracts, declined to comment on work it has done for the U.S. government, but said in a statement, ESD America has several corporate and foreign government clients whom we have assisted in the detection of potential IMSI catcher operations across many cities, including Washington, D.C. In the tests they conducted for private clients, which took place over the past 3 years, the company said it has detected signs of IMSI catchers near the White House, the FBI headquarters, the Senate, the Pentagon, the Russian embassy, and along the collection of other foreign embassies in an area known as Embassy Row in Northwest Washington. I don't know what kind of range these things have, but I mean, if it's got a significant radius, then, you could put it in the middle of DC and all of those things would be in its catchment area. But I guess if it's relatively short range, then you're really talking about a lot of effort. The Washington area's dense collection of U.S. official and sensitive facilities makes it prime real estate for cellular interception, experts say. For any large intelligence agency, the United States, especially now, is a high-value target, said Thomas Ridd, that says R-I-D, a political science professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, which, by the way, would be in range of one of these things, positioned as it is in Northwest D.C. They get paid to go after high-value targets. It's their job. It's a complete no-brainer. Good. I can understand it then. The letter said DHS officials during a pilot program last year did observe anomalous activity that appeared consistent with IMSI catcher technology within the Washington area, including near the White House. It cautioned that DHS has neither validated nor attributed such activity to specific entities, devices, or purposes, and said that some of the suspicious signals may have been emanating from legitimate cell towers. Well, let's straighten that the F out, shall we? Experts on cellular interception say that various IMSI catchers have distinctive designs, making it clear from the resulting cellular signals and behavior whether they were made by U.S. companies or by manufacturers in other countries. Civil liberties groups have long warned that these thingamabobs are used with few limits by U.S. authorities who collect calls, texts, and other data from innocent bystanders as they conduct surveillance on criminal suspects or other legitimate targets. Increasingly, though, critics have sought to portray the technology as posing threats to national security because foreign intelligence services use them on Americans, both while in the United States and abroad. This is a huge, concern from the national security perspective, said Laura Moy, M-O-Y, Deputy Director of Georgetown Law's Georgetown Law's Center on Privacy and Technology. People have been warning for years that these devices were used by foreign agents operating on American soil. They used to just use police scanners to listen to Newt Gingrich and John Boehner plotting work to cover up Gingrich's ethical foibles, as I recall, in contravention to his settlement with the Ethics Committee in the House. Remember way back when that happened? These things have never been secure. Anyway, the surveillance devices are hard to counteract, though encrypted calling and messaging apps such as Signal, WhatsApp, or Apple's FaceTime provide protection against IMSI catchers. Oh, I didn't know that. Some experts advocate wider deployment of such encrypted communications tools within the U.S. government, along with a move away from traditional cellular calling and texting. Probably a good idea. Just to wrap things up, Wyden and others have also called on the FCC, which along with DHS oversees the security of cellular networks in the U.S., to institute stronger protections against IMSI catchers, including possible technical fixes that cellular carriers or device makers could implement to resist surveillance. The FCC said in response to questions about the discovery of IMSI catchers in Washington, "We continue to monitor reports," this is my FCC voice, "reports of the use of IMSI devices, and to coordinate closely with our counterparts at DHS, DOJ, and the FBI. The FCC," to add some more letters to the pile, "strenuously enforces its rules against unauthorized use of licensed radio spectrum and harmful interference with licensed users of the airwaves." That, I didn't feel like that meant anything. And it probably didn't. Not just because you and I didn't understand the jargon, but because they weren't really trying to do anything. So, all very interesting. Thank you for sending that our way. We'll include that in our roundup, which I'm cobbling together all by myself this week, as I am, unfortunately, without Scott to help out with this. And I am reminded constantly, but I'm reminded more so this week than most others, how valuable a service that really is. And if I could make one more pitch, again, and I really have to update those little pre-recorded ones that I insert in the podcast. I'm sorry if I'm boring you with this, but I could use your help in pitching in at patreon.com/KagroX in particular. Your contributions help make it possible, one, for me to face my family for having spent the first half and these days a good portion of the second half of the day on the show for which nobody actually salaries me. And so it helps to be able to justify the way I'm spending my day, keeping you all sane, not to mention myself. I mean, this is, it's better than therapy and cheaper too. But in addition, it offers me at the moment the ability to offer a token payment just to say thank you to Scott. And quite honestly, if we were bringing in Rush Limbaugh money, Scott should be rolling in it. It's a great job that he does, and you really miss it when it's gone because, you know, summarizing the show, it's not like super difficult, but it's extraordinarily difficult when you're winded and tired from the show, for one thing. And it takes a while to thumb through it and line things up and make a match with all of the various articles that we used. And the difference between having Scott and not having him is being chained to the desk to do that stuff immediately following the end of the show, as opposed to being able to get up and run errands or get some exercise or move your legs so you don't get an embolism sitting around doing the show, or whatever it is you'd like to do with the rest of your day, like move on with other subjects or even get ready for another show. And when that's gone, it's sorely missed. And even when it's here, I don't get to pay Scott nearly what he's worth for the time he spends on it. And it wouldn't take that much to do it. So I ask for your continued support and thank you to those of you who have been doing it without any public adulation for so long. I appreciate it. It makes a lot possible. And those of you who have had a good time listening to the show as a result, and who have been unable to contribute to date, hey, I understand things are tight. It's always true, and I hope things turn around for you soon, and that when they do, you think of us and share the good fortune. All right, moving on to things that affect more of the rest of the world than just me and Scott. Here's news of the day that you'll need to know about for the weekend. That's what the Friday show is usually about. It's really what all the shows are usually about. It's just a convenient excuse to bring up new stuff that didn't make it to Pocket yet because it's so damn new. Here's the stuff today. Let's see. NBC News is reporting this. I also saw it flash across the screen from TPM, but I have a feeling that that is just based on the NBC News report. So let's go to that one. A new name to add to the Rogues Gallery, and it sounds like maybe pay dirt. Jared Kushner's close friend, Rick Gerson. Have we heard that name? I mean, it's kind of generic, so maybe it feels like it's familiar. Maybe we've called the name before. I don't know. Let's see. As we read about his background, maybe it will remind us. Rick Gerson, though, is now under scrutiny from Mueller. He is apparently a person of interest to Mueller. I'm not that terribly interested in him, but actually, as I look at the photos illustrating the thing, yeah, they're suspicious looking lot. It's a picture of Rick Gerson with his wife, Libby, I guess Libi. And by the way, another Trump orbit person who's got another one of these blonde wives that, I mean, you know, people are blonde. It doesn't say much. Although, once I heard somebody rattled off a statistic at some point somewhere, I don't know where, about the number of adult humans who are actually blonde, who would like naturally be blonde haired, being around something like 5% of the world population. And granted, you know, in countries dominated by a non-white population, that and that being the majority of the world, that makes a certain amount of sense. And okay, we're concentrated in a cluster of it here, but seems like, I guess, being, I don't know, does it have to do with being coastal at all? How's the blonde ratio in America's heartland? Can you report to me about that one? It seems to me, well, clearly there are lots of people who are, let's say, naturally less blonde than they purport to be in their daily lives, you know, to others. They're chemically enhanced, I guess, blondism. But if the statistics are right, that 5% lives everywhere around me, wherever I go. You can't escape. Anyway, it's not just having blonde hair, of course. There's a certain, let's say, almost like a certain type. Like, for instance, Donald Trump's type. And it's weird how people who are hangers-on to his circle and admire his lifestyle imitate it in this particular way. But it's understandable, it's explainable, it's just weird. And it might have reasons well outside of my imagined ones. That's not what we're here for. We're here to find out about who is Rick Gerson and why do we care, or more to the point, why does Robert Mueller care? I'm trying to make it intriguing and mysterious so that the break will come up and I can tease you into waiting until the other side of the break, but that's not, from the statistics that I've got, such a huge problem anyway. You'll wait. So I'll begin now. A close friend of Jared Kushner has come under scrutiny by Special Counsel Robert Mueller, and I appreciate the fact that NBC News has not gone on to explain to me that, you see, he's the special counsel investigating Russian interference in the 2016 United States presidential election. But yet I have just wasted the same amount of time that I usually complain about wasting by inserting that. This is becoming a problem for me. So, Mueller's interested in this dude. Why? For his proximity to some key meetings. That's why, between Trump associates and foreign officials, according to 5 people familiar with the matter. We'll find out later that they requested anonymity because they're not actually authorized to speak about the case. Won't that be exciting? Richard Gerson, a hedge fund manager in New York. What? No way. Jared Kushner is friends with a hedge fund manager. Is that what people now, like, instead of graduating from college and say, I'm going to run like a punk zine, I'm going to run a hedge fund, because why not? Because one of these days we should just talk a little bit about what the hell hedge funds really are. I mean, if you're just a rich person who has some investments and somebody goes, hey, what should I invest in? And you tell them, like, your ideas, are you a hedge fund manager now? Is that all it takes? Or do they have to give you the money to do it with? And how I'd be interested to do some side by side about the parallels between hedge funds and private equity funds. Are they the same thing? I don't even know. Anyway, this doofus was in the Seychelles in January 2017, less than 2 weeks before President Donald Trump's inauguration. That's not the important part. But rather that it was around the time that Trump associate Eric Prince secretly met with Russian and United Arab Emirates officials, including Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan of Abu Dhabi. 4 of the people said. The 5th dentist surveyed recommended, I guess, either no gum at all or said, chew all the sugar you want. I've never really figured that one out. Anyway, somehow 4 of the 5 people familiar with the matter say he was in the Seychelles. He say he in the Seychelles by the seashore at that time. And though there are plenty of reasons to go to the Seychelles, one might wonder what he was doing there. While in the remote Indian Ocean island nation, Gerson met with Prince Mohammed. Well, that's the answer. Now, why would he be meeting with him? Because he's a hedge fund manager. So he met with Prince Mohammed, known by his initials as MBZ, and communicated with Lebanese-American businessman with close ties to the UAE, George Nader, who had organized the Eric Prince meeting, according to text messages Gerson sent at the time and a person familiar with the meeting. So now we're really getting somewhere. It's not just that he happened to take a Seychelles vacation at an odd time, but that he went there and met with the key actors in this mysterious meeting and texted about it too. How did we get his texts? That's a good question. Maybe we got that answer in the previous story. Anyway, I have successfully teased you to the break. I urge you to hang on just 2 minutes and find out more about what this guy and his blonde wife have been up to. I don't even know if we have info on her. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I am thumbing through the Google hits. I'm trying to figure out, I don't know why I'm spending so much time on the wife here. I mean, it's clearly the idea here is that when the two of them together, everyone is supposed to pay attention to her for whatever reason. And she lives up to all the hype, I guess. I just can't figure out, why she's an important person. And it's not indicated in the article that she is, but like I said, in Googling the two of them, she turns up, she appears to be a bit of a socialite, and I don't know whether there's accomplishment of some kind behind it, and so therefore she finds herself either wealthy independently of having married this hedge fund manager or not, or whether she's billed as an accomplished person. But what do I know? I very rarely understand, pop culture in general, and she may be a very famous person and very accomplished, and I would have no idea. But it's usually easier to find out what is that person's specialty. Although, again, somebody went to the White House yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, and to meet with the president personally to discuss prison reform, which is a hugely important issue in this country, and I cannot figure out what makes that person famous either, and it's Kim Kardashian. And everyone knows that she's famous, and I never really did get to the bottom of why that is. But look, let me tell you about Richard Gerson, because he's the suspicious character here. Maybe we'll find out it's her in the end. Gerson had met Nader, George Nader, remember him, just weeks earlier when Trump officials, including Kushner, gathered for a secret meeting. Secret. Yes, it is another secret meeting. A secret meeting this time with MBZ, our crown prince here of Abu Dhabi, at a Four Seasons hotel in New York. He didn't even get a cut of this money. Four Seasons Hotel in New York. Four people familiar with the meeting said Trump's incoming national security advisor, the notorious spy Michael Flynn, and chief political advisor Steve Bannon, the notorious racist, as well as the UAE's ambassador to the U.S., Youssef Otaiba. We have definitely spoken of him before. Also attended the meeting. Maybe we were reading about the meeting. Gerson's presence in the Seychelles and at the Four Seasons meeting has not yet been previously reported. Again, now becoming like the favorite phrase among reporters, which is, I guess, a way of attempting to... Is that like a way of saying it's an exclusive if you're not sure it's an exclusive? Mueller's interest in Gerson is another sign that he is examining connections between the UAE and Trump associates. Counterintelligence investigators have been scrutinizing UAE influence in the Trump campaign since before Mueller was appointed as special counsel, way back then. And the probe has continued in coordination with Mueller's team, according to two people briefed on the investigation. A spokesman for Gerson, he's got a spokesman because he's a rich guy, declined to say why Gerson met with MBZ in the Seychelles or communicated with Nader while there. The spokesman emphasized that Gerson did not participate in a meeting Eric Prince attended with Russian and Emirati officials. Mr. Gerson was on vacation in the Seychelles prior to the meeting you reference. He knew nothing about the meeting, had left before the meeting was reported to have taken place. Well, of course, that wasn't reported until months later. And has never met or communicated with Eric Prince, the spokesman said. That probably isn't going to work out for him in the end. The spokesman said Gerson's involvement in the December meeting at the Four Seasons in New York was limited to escorting former British Prime Minister Tony Blair to the meeting. What the F with this guy? So he could give the participants a presentation on Israeli-Palestinian peace. Sure. Mr. Gerson attended the meeting in New York along with Mr. Blair to discuss this issue. Why? Adding that Gerson has known Blair since Blair's time as an envoy for the Middle East Quartet, a very popular barbershop quartet. No, a diplomatic coalition comprised of the U.S., European Union, United Nations, and Russia. Russia? Well, okay. By necessity. That focuses on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Kushner has led the Trump administration's efforts, blink, blink, on Israeli-Palestinian peace deals. He has come under scrutiny, of course, by Mueller and spent more than 6 hours, speaking to investigators in April. The Senate Intelligence Committee has also looked into Gerson's presence at the Seychelles and other meetings related to the UAE, according to two officials briefed on the matter. You can't have a hedge fund and be connected to all these people and not have some Emirati money parked somewhere. Come on. Two people familiar with the meeting said they inferred that Gerson was there because of his connection to Kushner. One of them said UAE officials considered Gerson to be Kushner's guy. How would you like that? Be reduced to Kushner's guy. Mueller is investigating whether the Seychelles meeting with Eric Prince was an effort to set up a back channel between the incoming Trump administration and the Russian government. He's also looked into the Four Seasons meeting, which the Obama White House only later learned about because the UAE had broken protocol, remember this, by not informing the outgoing administration that MBZ was in the U.S. I remember that. Mueller's team has asked witnesses about Gerson's proximity to key meetings, according to three people familiar with the questioning. I wish we would use the same set of people, but I guess that's probably impossible. Gerson's spokesman declined to say whether Gerson has been personally contacted by Mueller. That's a yes. A spokesman for the counsel's office, special counsel's office, declined to comment, as did Otaiba, and a lawyer for Nader. A lawyer for Jared Kushner, just any guy, any lawyer, it's not Abby Lowell. A lawyer for Jared Kushner did not respond to a request for comment on Gerson. A spokesman for Tony Blair also did not respond to requests for comment on the December 2016 meeting in New York. A spokesperson for Eric Prince declined to comment. Everybody's declining to comment, okay? Gerson, who goes by Rick, founded Falcon Edge Capital LP. Now you know. Of which he serves as chairman and chief investment officer. He has been friends with Kushner for more than a decade, and since they're both 12, that's, like major. Gerson had pursued business with the UAE prior to the 2016 election, of course. A foreign intelligence official told NBC News that a flight manifest shows Gerson was on a plane to the Seychelles with other Americans, some of them, we might even know who they are, a few days ahead of the Prince meeting. That meeting, around January 11th, 2017, included MBZ, Nader, Prince, a security contractor, they're explaining who Prince is, Blackwater, and Kirill Dmitriev, the CEO of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, who is close to Putin. On January 10th, 2017, Nader and Gerson exchanged messages on WhatsApp. According to 3 people familiar with the messages, in one message, Nader sent Gerson a photo of himself and MBZ that he said was taken in December of 2016 when they were in Morocco, these people said. That's a nice photo to have because, of course, Nader has pedophilia problems, as I recall. They said Gerson replied that he was unable to make it to Morocco because he was with his children in Anguilla, and because of that, he came to the Seychelles instead. I can't come to see you because I'm on vacation, but pretty soon I will go on another vacation and see you. What a hard worker. What a maker. In another message exchange a few days later, Nader sent Gerson an article about Jared Kushner and his brother Josh. Gerson replied that he's good friends with both of them. According to the people familiar with the messages, they said Nader responded that he'd heard when he was in New York how much Jared Kushner respects Gerson, adding, "Remember at Four Seasons." These people love to inflate each other's egos. Gerson and Nader's relationship expanded after Trump's inauguration when they began discussing business and policy, these people said. Of course, policy they didn't really care about. The question was, I am a hedge fund manager, and can I get some of that sweet, sweet UAE lucre? And Nader thinks he has some influence about where that money is spent, and I guess probably shined Gerson on about that, and Gerson was thinking about getting his hands on the money, and yada yada. And if it takes talking about policy, fine. That's what we'll do. Mueller's team has also asked questions about a meeting Gerson attended with Kushner and Bannon in New York in early 2017, according to the New York Times. Nader has been cooperating with Mueller's probe since January and has already given several days of testimony to investigators, a development first reported by the New York Times and confirmed by NBC News. Eric Prince has described the meeting with Dmitriev as an impromptu encounter. Everybody's on plane manifests on their way to impromptu encounters in the middle of the Indian Ocean. He told the House Intelligence Committee one of the UAE officials he was meeting with in the Seychelles about potential business deals suggested he see Dmitriev. And at the end, one of the entourage says, "Hey, by the way, there's this Russian guy that we've dealt with in the past, and he's also here to see someone from the Emirati delegation. You should meet him. He'd be an interesting guy for you to know since you're doing a lot in the oil and gas and mineral space," Prince told lawmakers. No, he's not. But okay, why not say that? The inclusion of a wealthy businessman with close ties to the president's son-in-law in meetings with foreign officials suggests a potential mixing of personal and government business by Trump associates, according to Robert Anderson, a principal at the Chertoff Group and former executive assistant director at the FBI. It also raises questions about outside influence of the Trump administration's policy decisions, he said. The intent of the meeting is key, Anderson said. Mueller would be looking at whether he tried to utilize his position as someone attached to the incoming administration to benefit financially, or whether he tried to influence U.S. policy by making introductions between Trump associates and the international community. Well, duh. Yes, and soon we'll find out. So now you have background on, well, or at least awareness of Rick Gerson, and we'll see whether news breaks wide anytime soon about what he's been up to. In the meantime, Libby Gerson, like I said, I was just sort of curious about who she was and what she did, and so I went to the Google machine, and I will try it over again, and I just put it, and it's Libby Gerson. Sounds like an L-I-B-I. That spelling makes me think that we'll, get a unique hit. And we did. And the first thing that comes up, and it's always interesting when this is the case for anybody that has so many images come up first in your Google search. And it's definitely the same person here. And here is the picture that they just used in the MSNBC or NBC article. And the photo itself comes from the site Film Magic. And it is a photo of Rick and Libby in New York in December December 3rd, 2012. Rick Gerson, and by the way, and it's listed here, Libby Gerson left and Rick Gerson right, and it's not, I don't know whether it's because they're standing left to right or whether she's the more important personage at this stage of the game, attended the Museum of Modern Art film benefit honoring Quentin Tarantino, before he was problematic, I guess, back in 2012. And so that gives you like an idea of what sort of circles that they move in. The next, how come I can't go backwards on this thing? The next photo offered up of her is, I guess, her Instagram and Pinterest profile photo, in which she is highly tanned and wearing an extraordinarily short dress. So, you know, that's always of interest, I guess. She hasn't created any pin boards yet, as it turns out, but her Instagram uses the same thing, and also no posts. So not an active active social media personage, but lots of accounts out there. But so, like I said, a socialite and constantly being photographed against like event backdrops, you know, where they print the name of the event or whatever it is over and over again, so that when you get your picture taken, the correct brand is promoted. And here she is appearing at an event for, what is this? I got to get out of the images and go back to the search itself. Come on now. Back to all. She was appearing at a event for Girls Incorporated, which I'll get to in a second here. The top site that comes up as a hit for her is at the Patrick McMullen Company, who appears to be photographers and sort of paparazzi type photographers taking pictures of socialites in different settings, and they have a whole file on Libby. Libby Gerson appearing here at the unveiling of White Square by Richard Meyer and Partners, December of 2017. I don't know what that thing is that they are unveiling, but if you were really super hip and cool, you would know. There's a couple of White Square things here. Here's one from Girls Incorporated 2016 Spring Luncheon honoring Stephanie Rule of MSNBC and Kirkland Ellis LLP. And I don't know what to tell you. They're having an event and no one knows why. So I went searching around some more. Let's see. There's an article there's the Film Magic thing. Then New York City Power Woman turnout for Girls Incorporated. And I assume they meant Power Women, but they spelled it wrong here at Haute Living. And I don't know how you pronounce that French word, that haute couture sort of thing, Haute, but how would you like to be living that lifestyle? Well, if you were, you would likely be a subscriber to, if they have subscriptions, Haute Living. MSNBC's newest daytime anchor, Stephanie Rule, and legal powerhouse Kirkland Ellis LLP were recently honored by Girls Incorporated of New York City. Now, Kirkland Ellis LLP isn't a girl, it's a law firm. But all right, they were recently honored by Girls Incorporated of New York City, the local chapter of a group that helps over 140,000 young women throughout the U.S. and Canada. Do what? I don't know. I'm sure it's great. Michelle Obama, as a matter of fact, serves as honorary board chair of the nonprofit. And here, to prove how good they are, is a picture of Katie Lee, who is, I'm sure, famous for something. having her photo taken in front of the Girls Incorporated of New York City backdrop. The luncheon, held at the Metropolitan Club, which sounds ritzy, and I know I've seen in newspaper articles in the past as being super famous and powerful or whatever, brought out some of New York's highest achieving women. New York City's highest achieving women. Among them, and I'm not editing, this is how it's presented: Lisa Blau, B-L-A-U, Carrie Ann Flynn, I'm pausing because I don't know who these people are, Lori Gelman, Libby Gerson, number 4 on the list. Then Kimberly Kravis, Katie Lee, Juliette Longuet, L-A-O-N-G-U-E-T, Christine Lemieux, Julie Macklow, Vanessa Nadal, Purvi Padilla, Purvi, P-U-R-V. You got to walk around. Her name's Purvi. P-U, Purvi. You really have to pronounce that right. Diana Picasso. Now, hey, Picasso. I don't know. Relation? Maybe. Barbara Clark Ruiz. I'm terrible at this. Jackie Sackler, Peggy Siegel, Amber Tolliver. And, and they're all probably like really accomplished at a lot of important things, and I still don't know who they are. And it's not because they're women, it's because I'm dumb. But okay. Girls Incorporated New York Executive Director Pam Marlato was joined by board members Courtney Adante, Elaine Ball, Cecile Giles, perhaps, G-Y-L-E-S, Angie Karna, Camille Mantelin, and Kyung-Ah Park. And more famous people having their photos taken here. Caroline Ray up next. Rule and Kirkland Ellis received the 2016 Leadership and Corporate Leadership Awards, respectively. The event also honored the achievements of Girls Incorporated participants Yvette Morales and Giselle Yepes. Their memorable speeches were followed by a live auction, where items sold quickly and included a Breakfast at Tiffany's package for 6 people donated by the jewelry retailer, a gourmet meal for 4 prepared by Katie Lee at her Hamptons home, sold twice over, a Tracy Anderson 6-month membership along with a private training session, 2 sets of Hamilton show tickets, and individual year sponsorships of Girls Incorporated Girls. The event raised over $500,000 to help fund the group's initiatives. Okay, here's a photo of Peggy Siegel. I don't know which one she is. There's 2 people in the photo. Couldn't tell you. And here's a photo of Julie Macklow. And again, these are things I'm terrible at. Girls Incorporated programs are broad-ranging. They encourage young women to develop math, tech, and science skills. That's good. Teach them how to manage money. Good. Navigate media messages. Good. I'm sure it's all good. And for more information, you can go to girlsincorporated.org. It's just kind of one of those things that's like, well, you can't fault anybody here for wanting to do any of these things, but New York's socialite life is weird. It just is. And by the way, it's actually kind of in the news these days, and I have these articles set aside in pocket. They're just not relevant to anything that we're doing. But have you seen this like series of hot articles about some socialite hanger-on in particular who moves in these circles and has been just the subject of these hot articles in Vanity Fair and The Cut at New York Magazine, I guess. It's been really kind of unusual and odd. I'm tempted to read the stories aloud, but I'm just going to read them on my own and digest them later on. But Anna Delvey, I guess, is the name of this mysterious socialite person that is turning up in all these articles. Everybody's talking about her. Everybody's talking about her. You can't get enough. Anyway, again, I guess I'm just still sort of fascinated at how long can you go on Googling Libby Gerson and getting all these hits and seeing how many places she turns up and how much money she's given to campaigns and I guess even where she lives without finding out what she does and why she's famous. And I think that's really strange. Here's an entry, The Fall Party, an entry at NewYorkSocialDiary.com. Again, just to give you an idea of the circles we're talking about here, although I think you have got the picture. Let's see, is she in this picture here, this lineup? No. Is she in this one? No. Where does her name come up in all this? I don't know. This is one of those articles, too, that is mostly a collection of pictures of people who were at the party, not necessarily doing party things, but on their way into and out of the party. And by the way, if it's to be believed that only 5% of the world population is blonde, I found them all. They're all here. This is, it's just a bizarre section of our culture, and it's, alternately who cares and very sad that it even exists. But again, I'm having an awfully difficult time figuring out who she is and what she does. And, maybe it's not even important, so I should just move on at this point. But if you have any idea who she is or why she's there, maybe you could find out and let me know. All right. Let's see. Let's move on to some other important things here, because I feel like we're losing control of things once again. And head over to Pocket and see if I can remind myself of some of the fun things that I put aside. Yes, here we go. Definitely something very important that we touched on briefly, I think, yesterday with Greg. The trade wars heating up once again, and it's getting goofy out there. And, of course, countervailing duties will be imposed on by the United States chiefly against our allies and biggest trading partners, and they will retaliate against us. It's not just us fighting with China anymore. And I think a good encapsulation of it here in Business Insider. America's transactional and visceral approach to world trade risks derailing the global recovery. Pedro Nicolazzi da Costa. Very fancy name. I like it, Pedro. Has written this piece up here, and I was attracted by that headline, transactional and visceral, and I think that really sums it up. Well done. Don't know if Pedro wrote the headline, but whoever did has done a good job. Couple of bullet points up at the top here that might make it easy to digest the rest of the article. President Donald Trump has started the trade war anew with fresh announcements of steel and aluminum tariffs that prompted swift threats of retaliation from key allies. Again, key allies. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau expressed his disappointment with the decision, taken as the U.S., Canada, and Mexico are attempting, not really, to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement. We had a free trade agreement in place, and now we're bashing each other with countervailing tariffs. That's what free trade agreements are supposed to avoid, but to hell with the arc of history, says Donald Trump. It's ramping up the whole world trade war tone, and it's unnecessary, particularly with our allies. Dec Malarkey, Managing Director of Investment Research at Sun Life Investment Management, told Business Insider. Okay. Now, just 10 days after Secretary of the Treasury Steven Mnuchin said that the U.S. trade war against major commercial partners was on hold, President Donald Trump unveiled a new round of tariffs targeting some of America's closest allies, because that's what you do with your allies. U.S. stocks took a dive after Trump, having previously vacillated on the issue, announced Mexico, Canada, and European Union member countries would be hit with new tariffs on steel and aluminum. The move sparked immediate threats of retaliation from those nations, renewing fears of a damaging global trade war. It doesn't make any sense, Dec Malarkey says. The current administration is very transactional and visceral, but our allies are very strategic and deliberate. It comes just as there had been quite a bit of progress on NAFTA deliberations, Malarkey said. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau certainly minced no words, taking to Twitter to do this. American tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel are unacceptable. As we have said, we will always stand up for our workers, and today we're announcing retaliatory measures to this attack on our industry. Trudeau also elsewhere, of course, said, we don't think of this as a problem with the American people, but hopefully common sense will prevail and they'll come to realize, essentially he's saying they elected an idiot as a leader and hopefully will rectify the situation the first chance they get. It's my hope too. And I'm no Canadian Prime Minister, but that's what I hope happens. Anyway, while market participants hope Trump is blustering, certainly possible, and may not actually follow through with many of the harshest proposed measures, the increasing uncertainty is starting to hang over the global economy. Right? Remember Malarkey saying it's ramping up the whole trade war tone. particularly unnecessary with our allies. The bigger concern, according to Malarkey, is that threats to curb auto imports from countries like Germany could become policy at any moment, threatening a huge sector of the global economy with potentially wide supply chain ramifications. China, on the other hand, is taking the long road with Trump. They see it as in their interest to appear to make some concessions to the U.S. president, all the while flexing their global muscle as the world's second largest economy, and increasingly a chief champion of open trade, a historic role reversal. Whoops, sorry about that. They will give Trump wins, but they are looking at this through the China 2025 lens. They want to become a powerhouse in artificial intelligence, technology, automated vehicles, etc. They're very serious about building a coalition with Europe and others, Malarkey said. That risks leaving the United States behind. That's probably not a good thing to risk. And yes, threats against German automakers, I don't know if I actually put this one aside, but I certainly saw in passing once or twice reported that I don't even know where it comes from, but does anybody know exactly what's making him mad? And I think it might be, again, something as dumb as, well, Angela Merkel says bad things about me, so I'm going to punish Germany. And he has said, allegedly, the threat is, I'm going to ban the importation, just an outright across-the-board blanket ban on the importation of German luxury cars. That does not seem like something that would, A, be in his personal interest or whatever, but it just doesn't seem doable. But he's saying, yeah, no BMWs, no Mercedes-Benzes, I'll try and bring up the article. I don't know why it isn't marked here. I saw it, though, while I was out on the run. And I guess the thing is, he said, I'm going to ban them, and they're not going to be allowed in here, and you're not going to see any more of those along Fifth Avenue, because that's the entirety of his world. Bizarre. We'll see if we can figure it out on the other side. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Just taking that 1 minute break and trying to Google up some of the articles here. Well, none of them will come up without any auto-playing video, of course. But yeah, I mean, that's I guess the report originated, according to all of these stories, with a German, what is that background noise I hear now? Something going on here. Well, maybe I'm imagining it. It sounds like I'm outdoors all of a sudden, and I'm not. But anyway, apparently all of this stuff reported originally by a German, magazine? Is that right? Wirtschaftswoche? Wirtschaftswoche? W-O-C-H-E. I have no idea how they would pronounce that. But a report there says that President Donald Trump is hoping to effectively ban sales, of Mercedes-Benz, Audi, and other German cars, the BMW included, I guess, according to a report from a German magazine. It cites unnamed diplomatic sources who say Trump told French President Emmanuel Macron that he would maintain his trade policy until no Mercedes models rolled on Fifth Avenue in New York. And I mean, again, just, oh my God, this guy's idiotic worldview. I don't know what to tell you. I hope there's a hell. Anyway, the trade policy would seemingly affect any German automaker, though, putting sales of Porsche, I suppose, and Volkswagen and its Audi luxury division at risk, as well as Daimler. I don't know why he's targeting them, but that's what he's saying. Trump began pushing for heavy tariffs, as much as 25% on car imports a week ago. U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said at the time, there is evidence suggesting that for decades, imports from abroad have eroded the domestic auto industry. Trump himself hinted at the news before the announcement, of course, because he can't help himself, implying the tariffs would result in more domestic jobs for automakers. They will not. He was saying, there will be big news coming soon for our great American auto workers. After many decades of losing your jobs to other countries, you have waited long enough. And so I assume he'll destroy that industry shortly. The magazine did not offer details about how Trump planned to block sales, Germany, though, is the largest European exporter of cars to the United States because the American people love them and they're going to be very upset if they can't get them. Trump has long held a hardline position toward German automakers. Last January, he underscored this in comments that appeared in the German magazine Bild. When you walk down Fifth Avenue, as almost nobody in America routinely does, but we're the elitists, so please go screw yourself if you're angry about this. This is how we got Trump. I don't know why that's the case, but I think I just got a job at a newspaper. When you walk down Fifth Avenue, everybody has a Mercedes-Benz parked in front of his house, which, man, that must be some part of Fifth Avenue. Okay. Well, that's what he said anyway, and of course I can't tell you the rest because a polo ad for Ralph Lauren has decided it was more important than the rest of this news. Came up in front of it. When you walk down Fifth Avenue, as I almost never do because I'm gigantic and I don't even walk on the greens of my golf course, but if you do, you'll see that everybody parks a Mercedes-Benz in front of his house. And so what if they do? You were very unfair to the USA. Who? It isn't mutual. How many Chevrolets do you see in Germany? Not many, maybe none. You don't see anything at all over there. It's a one-way street. And maybe it's because they don't want Chevrolets, but I don't know. Maybe it's about tariffs. And it'll all be fixed if there are fewer Mercedes-Benzes parked in front of the stately manors along Fifth Avenue. All right. I mean, I really don't know what drives it, but it's out there, and, well, what can I tell you? It's going to be awfully stupid. Here's something. Maybe we should look at this. Bloomberg has Merkel's foreign minister ridicules Trump's concerns about German car threat. That sounds like fun. Chancellor Angela, and is she Angela, as Greg sometimes says? Merkel's top envoy pilloried the Trump administration for considering tariffs on auto imports to protect national security, saying German cars make American roads safer. Well, that may be overstating things, but I don't know, maybe not. News that President Donald Trump was investigating tariffs on car and truck imports, a move that would hit German manufacturers the hardest, reached Foreign Minister Heiko Maas just before his first meeting with new U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Washington last week. So I asked Mike Pompeo. This is great. This is very conversational, Heiko. So I asked Mike Pompeo, Mike, you guys can't be serious. I wonder if he has an accent. You guys can't be serious. The German cars affect your national security. That's a very heavy accent. Maas said at the Global Solutions Summit in Berlin on Tuesday, quite the contrary, German autos make American roads safer. Of course, they're talking about two different things here, but let's conflate them and have some fun. Maas, a German social democrat in Merkel's cabinet, used the speech to lament the breakdown of global multilateral relations. Oh, Armando has a... do you have a Mercedes, Armando? Hey, Armando, you driving in a Mercedes right now?
No, I am driving, though, my usual call-in from I-95 in South Florida.
Excellent. There you go. A little sound effect to help you out.
You attracted my... I haven't bothered you on air for a while.
Okay.
So, but the trade story...
This is dumb.
Pardon?
It's
beyond dumb. But here's the basic point. I think people just don't want to accept.
I'm
Trump
ready.
Doesn't understand this issue at all.
Well,
I mean, it's not like, well, he's negotiating. He doesn't even know what he's negotiating for.
No, of course not. I mean, you can tell from his ridiculous comments to be, I'm going to do this until there's no more Mercedes-Benzes on Fifth Avenue. Who cares what's on Fifth Avenue? Nobody. You, obviously.
Well, yeah. Anybody who's ever been on Fifth Avenue knows that people who live in their luxury apartments on Fifth Avenue actually don't park their cars on the street.
Certainly not in front of their houses on Fifth Avenue. What are you talking about?
No, they don't. They have their man go and get their car out of the garage or the limo or whatever, and they get picked up.
Well, okay. I'm sure some of them are Mercedes-Benzes, but really, like, it's parking.
I think he should shoot all the Mercedes-Benzes on Fifth Avenue.
Yes.
Because, what I mean,
can get away with that.
his supporters will still support him, no matter how many Mercedes he shoots.
I don't know. This is clearly a big issue for the coal miners. They're upset about the numbers. Our streets are clogged with Mercedes-Benzes.
Well, there is actually a coal miner story you probably saw. This weird recommendation. Maybe you talked about it already.
Not yet.
We're going to subsidize the coal industry and the nuclear power plant industry.
Yes, requiring electrical utilities to purchase power generated by the burning of coal and the fission of uranium, I guess.
It's like Solyndra, except really, really stupid.
Yes, and dangerous and or polluting. But all right, that's terrific. It's just unbelievable. But he's just a stupid person. He doesn't know. I think. Listen, all the aspects of it, the hateful, the bigotry. The crazy insanity. I mean, he's also mentally ill, but he's also very stupid. He's not a smart man. People keep faking this idea that he understands these things, and he doesn't understand anything. He doesn't. What is it? Okay, you're Justin Trudeau. Yeah.
And you ask Trump, well, what do you want me to do? What's your position? What is it that you want me to do in terms of this trade negotiation? Trump couldn't tell him.
Yeah. No.
Trump could not tell him.
You got to stop being totally unfair. Okay.
Right.
I can do it. No, you don't understand me. You treat us horribly. All right. What thing?
What thing? Literally, what thing? You think Trump could point to one particular thing about trade that Canada or even China? He got a phrase and then he had to drop it. Currency manipulation, which at one point in time,
Canadian currency manipulation, huge problem.
At least he's saying words that mean something.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I'm sure he's learned steel, or perhaps he might even say lumber. But I don't know. I mean, I'm afraid he might say, Mounties. What? Do you remember the movie where the whiskey is coming from Canada and the Mounties are trying to stop it and they can't do it. We got stupid Mounties trying to, what? He just knows nothing about Canada. I know nothing about Canada. I'm sure he knows less.
He knows nothing about just trade. It's the policy that is a problem. Are you saying they have unhigh tariffs or unequal tariffs? Well, no, NAFTA actually equalized tariffs. So it's not as if Canada's tariffs on our goods, except as negotiated, because there was a mutual thing, we might get able to protect something a little more, and they chose something to protect a little more. This is not, somebody's doing these things. Of course, the other way, in the old days, we talked about unfair trade practices. It was subsidization of industries, dumping of steel, which was a thing at one point. And we'd argue about, whether in the long run that's sustainable and did it really damage the United States because you're getting things for less cost, and that lower cost actually translates into other industries. Those are the discussions you have about trade policy. He doesn't know what any of these things I've just said are.
No. Well, very likely not.
Unfair. You're treating us horribly. He doesn't know what it means. And if Chevy can't sell it to Germany, there's no tariff on Chevys in Germany.
Is there? I don't know.
No, there isn't. There's no special. Germany doesn't need protective tariffs against Chevrolets. I hate to tell you.
No? Yeah, well, I mean, that doesn't surprise me. They, make their own cars, and they like them, and they apparently respond to what people in that market want, and that's enough.
Look, the Germans, for better or worse, have a superior position in the luxury automobile market worldwide. It's not just the United States. It's every country in the world. The Mercedes and the BMWs and the Audis and all those cars sell well. For whatever reason, people like those cars. There's probably good reasons. Probably because they're well made. They have cachet, all the things that you want for a product. It's like Apple.
Yeah.
The Apple
okay.
phone sells very well worldwide.
I'll agree.
It's not because we're treating somebody horribly.
It's just disgusting.
But can I just tie that nuclear power plant story and the coal, forced buying?
Yeah.
Because that's Trump's idea.
Right.
Trump wants to force Germany and China to buy more American goods. Force them. He doesn't want a fair playing field. He wants a rigged playing field that guarantees U.S. products market share.
Sure.
That's nice. It's a wonderful idea. Except the other countries aren't going to go along. Because they want to sell their products too.
Yes. Maybe they could pay for the wall.
You can't judge trade policy by what the result of the trade is. You know how conservatives always talk about equality of opportunity, not equality of result, with all their nonsense against affirmative action?
Yes.
Trade policy is going to be the same. You cannot guarantee a result on trade ahead of time. Because then it's not trade at all. It's just an agreement to, all right, well, you get this share. It's a mafia where I get Brooklyn, you get Queens, the other guy gets Manhattan, would be the 5 families.
That's a good comparison, I guess. Yeah, I mean, well, it's certainly not, open market trade or free market trade. Like, I like that product and I'm willing to pay for it versus, this is what you're going to buy. Everybody in this region buys this from you. Everybody in that region buys that from me.
There is an intellectual argument about trade to be had. Is the unfairness on labor standards in some countries and environmental standards on companies in some countries, and the various works, OSHA type protections, does that create an unfair burden on U.S. companies who have to comply with our regulatory state? We can argue about that. That's an intellectual debate.
Uh-huh.
That's not. Donald Trump has nothing to do with that debate. Not a thing.
No. Well, he doesn't. I guess he doesn't view it that way. He doesn't care. He's not involved in those trades either, and that's one of the things. Like, oh well, we've got to put a businessman in the White House, but I don't care about that business. I'm not in that business. So, to the extent he cares about it, I saw on television the other day that country, whatever country it is, sells more things to us than we sell to them. That's unfair. That's horrible. Yeah. How is that unfair?
That's
just the way we do things.
If I don't get everything I want, it's unfair. This is the thinking of a 3-year-old.
Yes. And unfortunately, I mean, we keep going back to, well, his base loves it. Well, his base probably does love it. That is unfair. Why should China sell us more things than we sell them? Because, I don't know, you want to buy Chinese crap, and they don't want to buy our things. I don't know. And they do want to buy. They buy plenty of our things. They buy plenty of our resources and raw materials, and plenty of consumer goods as well. But look, and it rings true for you because you go to Walmart and everything on the shelves there is made in China. He's got a point. No, he doesn't. You shop at Walmart. He goes nowhere near Walmart. And he thinks it's unfair because, I don't know, because they sell more things. Donald Trump sells more things to you than you sell to him. That's unfair. We should have his money. That never works.
With Donald Trump, and I guess he still does, and Ivanka Trump licensed their name to be slapped on cheap products.
Yes.
To be sold to however they sell these things. They went to China because China had the lower per unit cost.
Yeah.
Why did Donald Trump do that? Why didn't he, have his things made in America?
Really wanted to make more money.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Now, if Donald Trump had said, China's being unfair to us because their minimum wage is too low and they use child and slave labor, and we're not going to use their products until they meet our labor standards and our environmental standards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would agree with that, but I would find the position coherent.
Yes. Well,
Of course.
except for the fact that he hates environmental standards.
There you go.
So, yeah, but it's a
And
very
of course,
interesting
his
backward way
daughter
of
and
doing
himself
things.
bought things that were made by child labor
Yes,
and slave labor.
and right, they have their things made there for that reason.
Yes. So again, there's a coherent argument that I can agree with to a point, but I think it's overstated. And if I actually was someone who was a fair trader, and if you don't know, listeners, I am pretty staunchly free trade and
Yes.
don't think protectionist policies really work at all. But at least if I was the person who was making that argument, like Matt Stoller's defending Trump for some reason on trade on Twitter, because Matt Stoller gets mentioned this way, I suppose. I said, the guy is discrediting your actual position because he says we're treated horribly. We're not treated horribly. We're not treated. If you don't want to buy his goods, you don't buy them. The horrible treatment China could do is creating trade barriers to American products into the United States. But that's not what's happening. Our trade has increased into China because its economy, its GDP has grown immensely. So we sell much more goods into China than we ever have.
Yeah.
What's happened is China sells a ton of goods to us, more than we buy from them. And there's a couple of good reasons. The main one is we have a lot more money than China does.
This is true.
So
Yeah,
when you
I mean,
have
that's just
more
the
money,
basics,
generally
right.
you buy more things than the person who has less money.
Yeah. Chinese consumers, not.
Yeah, but collectively as an economy,
yes, well, they're the
China
second
buys
biggest economy.
less things
Sure.
than the United States. I don't know what the exact percentage difference is, but it's not insignificant. It's a
It's
lot.
horribly
It's-
unfair.
I would suggest to you that the difference between the size of the GDPs of China and the United States is larger than the percentage difference in our trade deficit.
Oh. I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah,
So again, I go off on trade, and what's happened today, if Trump doesn't back down, is I think the allies have had it. They're not playing around anymore. Trudeau's statement was a real shot across the bow. Said, Trump, we've had it. No more of this crap.
We'll see.
And I don't know if it's because they were close to the whatever cosmetic revision they were doing to NAFTA, and the EU said, enough, we're doing this. And, of course, China bribed them, so they're off the hook.
Right.
Bribed them with the loan for the Trump Malaysia. So they're off the hook. China doesn't care anymore. China just says, great, you guys fight, and I'll trade with all the people you're fighting with because I'm not going to have tariffs.
Yeah.
I paid you $500 million, and that was cheap at the price to gain the market share I'm going to gain because you're an idiot.
Yep.
That's what's happening.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can't disagree. And I'm watching at the same time, by the way, the other hot discussion in the financial world this morning is, what has been really interesting was watching speculation about what is ordinarily a routine announcement about unemployment figures bubble over into...
He leaked the numbers.
Yeah.
He knew they were good. I assume they were good. I haven't seen them, but I assume they
I
were very
believe
good.
so. Yeah, and it looked like it came out well. And so he teases it an hour before the public announcement.
It's
he
outrageous.
He doesn't say anything.
It's
Nothing on the face of it hints at what the
Oh,
numbers
come
are.
on.
But everybody knows.
There's
that was the
nobody
thing
in
is.
the world who didn't know the number would be good
Sure,
and traded accordingly.
That's the point. I think what is really interesting is on its face, there's nothing revealing in the tweet. It's just that, one, presidents don't normally do this. But again, normal, what does that mean? And two, Donald Trump himself, really, honestly, there's no reason in the world why he'd be tweeting about the numbers if they weren't going to be good. And he's also that kind of person. It was amazing to me, really, that immediately dozens of people are saying, I know exactly what's going on here. The tweet on its face is, quote, looking forward to seeing the employment numbers at 8:30 this morning. End quote. That's all there is. On its face, Nothing that financial reporters don't
David,
tweet all the time.
please.
What's amazing to me,
Please.
well, what?
Maybe Maggie Haberman can play this game. Let's not us play.
Well, I'm not playing any game. You're not listening to me. I'm saying the amazing thing is that on its face, there's nothing wrong with the tweet, but immediately the whole world knows, oh my God, he's manipulating the numbers for profit. He is leaking the numbers to his friends. Immediately, people are like, he probably called all his friends last night. The president traditionally sees the numbers yesterday. Yes,
that's a real possibility.
That's what's so amazing to me.
That the numbers were good.
Is that so?
I think if you subpoena his phone, you'll find out who he talked to. And I bet you they traded.
And you might not have to
the job numbers being good.
You might not even have to do that, according to the first couple. One of the stories we read early in the morning. There's phone interceptor technology all over Washington. Somebody's got a tape of him doing it. So that's what was amazing to me. I'm not trying to say there's nothing wrong with the tweet. Again. If anybody else does it, fine.
There's everything wrong with that tweet.
Yeah, if anybody else tweets that, it's like, well, you didn't see the numbers, and you really are looking forward to seeing the employment numbers at 8:30. That's your job. You, who tweeted this at 7:25, saw
he wasn't looking forward to seeing them. He saw them.
So it's a lie on its face right there. But yeah, and I see Stephanie Ruhle, who's now, I've never called Stephanie Ruhle's name in any show that I am aware of. She's now been on the block here twice.
Ubiquitous. Enough about Stephanie Ruhle.
Saying in all caps, "Dear SEC, this is a market-moving tweet." And everybody going along, like everybody wants like an SEC investigation of the president. Now he says something that any normal person might actually say. But when the president says it, A, it's a lie because you saw him last night. Everybody knows that. And B, everybody immediately suspects he's doing something corrupt for his own benefit and the benefit of his friends, and I know exactly what it is and exactly how to obtain evidence of it. That's incredible that the United States president is that little trusted, that the first inkling that anybody gets when he says, hey, unemployment numbers coming out today, isn't, boy, cheerleading for U.S. jobs. That's great. Thanks for bringing us together on the economic front. But rather, oh, my God, he's stealing money. Let's catch him.
Well, that's who he is, though.
Yeah.
Because he does steal money.
That's the sad thing.
I mean, ironic complaint he had this morning was $17 million on the investigation into Russia. As if that number approaches the amount we've spent on his golf trips.
Right. Or the amount we've spent on Lipitor. I don't know the
latest numbers, but I'm pretty sure that it's a fraction of what we spend on his golf trips.
I don't know. I've seen a couple of different numbers flying around, but it's certainly comparable, and if not a fraction of it. But between what we spent on his golf trips and other nonsense that we've dealt with, it's nothing. It's a great bargain compared to that stuff. But my thing is, I don't understand why I have to pay for both all of his ice cream and his Lipitor prescription. That's not fair to me. It would be one or the other. Get off the ice cream so the Lipitor can work. I don't want to keep paying for this. Now, that's probably only a couple $100, but I'm not liking it.
Yeah. Listen, today is another day, ending in Y, where Trump demonstrates with everything he does that he's unfit to be president.
Yes.
And the reality is there's one check that we have in the meantime. It's going to be if we can take a House of the Congress and we can actually investigate whether he, in fact, traded on insider information, whether this deal that Kushner did with the funding for Qatar was a bribe to influence U.S. foreign policy. There's 8 million investigations that are real, substantial, legitimate, and frankly, big scandals. Each and every one of them, biggest scandals than anything we've seen in 20 years.
Yes.
And not one is being investigated, except Russia, because it had to be investigated, I guess, at the beginning, and Republicans pretended. If they had it to do all over again, they wouldn't even have investigations.
Yeah, probably not. By the way, yes, also reported at least 4 more, I think, instances of Trump insisting to Sessions that he unrecuse himself from the investigation. So that also very much in the news. And we haven't even gotten to what I keep insisting, and everybody else does too. I don't pat myself on the back for it. Is Trump's greatest crime? He, killed 5,000 Puerto Ricans and doesn't seem to care about it.
Yeah. Well, all right. I'm going to leave you to that, and I'll listen in on that.
All right.
Thanks for letting me unload a little bit. It's been a while.
All right. Take it easy. We'll talk to you again soon. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Okay, we have to let Armando go and get back down to business. Let's see. Oh, look at this. I already see Daniel Dale tweeting about what are the targets of retaliatory tariffs from the Canadian side. Kentucky bourbon, Florida orange juice, etc. Canada used some of its retaliatory tariffs to target swing states and influential Republican lawmakers. The sort of thing that wasn't normally done openly in politics, either domestically or internationally, now fair game, thanks to jackass Donald Trump. So, okay, well done there. Let's see. I wanted to, I want to put this aside. Every time I report to you on one or another of the tweets I see fly by, I want to be able to provide a link to it, and I realized I didn't put aside that Stephanie Rule one, and I want to go back and grab it, because, that was illustrative and something we need to take a look at here. Oh, look at that. Pinned tweet, SEC, where's that big SEC one? There it is, the market-moving tweet. All right. We'll hang on to that one. And I got a couple other stories to round up. Also, let's see. Where did I put this one? I think I just opened it. Brian Monroe sent me something from the Canadian side of the border. On this one from the CBC. I'm pretty well pissed off, it says here. Strategic or not, here's how Trump's tariffs on U.S. allies could backfire. We imagine how they could, and here's some specifics on it. Matt Kwong writing for CBC News. Blake Hurst can't help but laugh. Well, that's good. Tell us about it, Blake. The future of his family farm in northwest Missouri, looks that grim. It's going to be painful, he said, hours before new tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum kicked in at midnight on Friday. What else are you going to do? Let's find out what's up for Blake. Hurst's first concerns were about how U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to pull out of the North American Free Trade Agreement might further imperil his livelihood. Then came Trump's proclamation last March that he would impose sweeping tariffs, 25% on foreign steel and 10% on foreign aluminum, in a move seen as taking aim at China for dumping cheap metal into the U.S. market. For a while, at least, there was some reprieve. The EU, Canada, and Mexico were exempt from the tariffs, keeping Hurst hopeful the foreign economies he relies on wouldn't retaliate with punishing duties against the U.S. No such luck. Mexico, Europe, and Canada announced retaliatory tariffs on Thursday after the U.S. moved to slap on new tariffs on steel and aluminum, escalating a trade dispute between the Americans and their top trading partners. Hurst, 61, sighed on the phone while speaking to CBC News. Our three biggest markets for farm exports are Canada, Mexico, and China. Sigh, he said. For our soybeans, by far the biggest is China, and a lot of our corn goes to Mexico. There's more here about the justification of the tariffs. In justifying them in March, Trump invoked national security, reasoning that the protection of American aluminum and steel was vital for the bedrock of our defense industrial base. Critics heard a flimsy pretext for imposing metal tariffs, arguing Trump was merely exploiting a loophole in the WTO, World Trade Organization, rules that allows trade restrictions for the purposes of national security. Ahead of the midterm elections coming in November, Trump could also be targeting a bloc of anti-free trade voters championing protectionism. All true, and lots of additional information here, but just once again, this article, too, referencing the same stuff. Yogurt, coffee, prepared meats, candies, whiskeys, he exclaimed. Who are we talking about? Dave Salmonson, the Farm Bureau's Senior Director for Congressional Relations, scanning Canada's new tariffs list. Reciting it aloud Thursday, he stopped on another political pressure point for Trump. That's the whiskeys. Oh boy, Kentucky and Tennessee won't like that at all. Oh my goodness, I guess it's not going to work out for you. But they'll blame Democrats, no doubt. Democrats imposed these tariffs, they'll say. Kentucky, of course, Mitch McConnell's state. And McConnell has warned about a slippery slope of trade swipes in retaliation for Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs. Orange juice also on Canada's duties list. Problem for Florida. European leaders have suggested cranberries and Harley-Davidson motorcycles might be subject to higher duties, but we've moved the production of those Harleys overseas recently as well. So I don't know. Anyway, it's not going to work out well for us, almost certainly. We'll see whether we come out of the short end of this one or not, but even if we don't, it's unlikely to work out well for us in general. All right, a couple other stories to hit on our way out the door. Let's see. Josh Orton, our Twitter pal and Netroots Nation pal, tweeted an interesting observation yesterday on something else we haven't touched on, but that occupied a lot of stupid time yesterday. Trump's idiotic use of the pardon. We did, of course, mention Dinesh Derp Souza and decided that wasn't worth very much time, but he expanded the playing field. And apparently, I don't know, just one of those things, to trigger the libs, said he was thinking about also pardoning former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. See, I'm pardoning Democrats. I'm not biased like you. And Martha Stewart. Of course, two weird choices, and because Trump is such a deep thinker and so broadly lettered, we realize very quickly, wow, Rod Blagojevich, Martha Stewart, what in the, well, they're both famous. It's narrower than that. Now, you might think, and you'd be right ordinarily to say, well, whoever I see on my telly, I'm going to pardon them if they're criminals, because I love crime, for one thing, but I love telly more than anything. And I want to see these people on my telly. And if they're in prizzy, I guess, I can't see them as frequently. Although, I've recently been told that as President of the United States, I can order by executive command that we put little webcams in their cells and I get to watch them. But it's not as exciting as seeing it on telly on a fun show that I like so much. So why Martha Stewart and Blagojevich? Not just because they're famous, but because they've both been associated with the mother effing Apprentice, the actual stupid television show. That's really it. Rod Blagojevich was on an episode or a season of The Celebrity Apprentice, and apparently Martha Stewart did some sort of Apprentice spin-off show at some point. And so it's more than just being on my telly. It's being on my telly show. And that's the world he knows because he's a toddler moron. So anyway, it was pointed out that by Josh Orton that Comey is in this picture too, right? Former FBI Director Comey, who he fired. Comey was the one. This is another connection. Who decided to prosecute Martha Stewart. So could it be something more than that? Could it be something even dumber than that? It certainly could be. More to trigger the libs. Like, I don't know. If do liberals care if Martha Stewart is pardoned? I don't know. I mean, anyway, but here's the thing. So it's more than the Apprentice connection. Comey was the one who decided to prosecute Martha Stewart. And it'll trigger the libs if I do something to undermine Comey's work as head of the FBI. Everyone knows that I think James Comey is a terrible, leaking son of a... And what I'll do is I'll overturn all the convictions that he's gotten, all the high profile... Not, of course, Trump would not bother with the work of... Well, I'll overturn every conviction he ever got. Well, as head of the FBI, that could be everybody. But all the famous ones that I saw on my, telly, those I'll get rid of. So James Comey... decides to prosecute Martha Stewart. And Josh Orton points out in his tweet, he says in his book that he did so because he would have done the same to a non-celebrity. He actually doesn't differentiate, apparently, allegedly, between celebrities and non-celebrities. But Trump, who differentiates on no other basis, sees something different. Now, Blagojevich, in addition to being associated with The Apprentice, was prosecuted by Patrick Fitzgerald. Remember him? A close Comey friend, Josh points out, who also indicted the now Trump-pardoned Scooter Libby. So it may also be that Donald Trump is like, bring me the names of famous people who got convicted by Comey or people that he's friends with that I can trigger Comey by pardoning those people. Now, Comey charged Martha Stewart with, among other things, lying to federal investigators. Now, guess what Fitzgerald charged Blagojevich with, in addition to all the corruption? Lying to federal investigators. Trump is, in addition to all this crap, sending the message that lying, for him, is decriminalized. And yeah, I think we're really looking at something quite like that. And the Dinesh D'Souza pardon also, if you actually want to take the time to look at it, is about, violating campaign finance laws, not really an issue for me or anybody associated with me, and I think it's okay, and I also do it, and that's why I think there's no collusion. I keep saying no collusion because I don't understand why this is wrong to do, and I do it, so it better not be wrong. Let's get rid of it as a crime. So there you go. Also, if you really want to get worried about stuff, maybe we'll throw one more thing for you to think about, to deep think about this, because this is kind of troublesome and takes it beyond the why that guy, he triggered me examination. Over at Lawfare, the executive branch's extraordinarily broad view of the presidential pardon power. Very, la-di-da. Okay. Maddie McMahon and Jack Goldsmith teamed up on this one. Maddie McMahon, I'm not as familiar with. Jack, we know about. Her profile's here. She's a second-year student at Harvard Law School. And, that's supposed to be a pretty good law school. So, all right, good. She teams up with Jack on this one. Check this out. Article 2 gives the president the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. And by the way, I'm for a very creative reading of that. I say that a impeached president, many people interpret this to mean, and it probably really does mean, that an impeached president can't pardon himself or can't be pardoned, and impeach anybody, can't be pardoned from the impeachment process because that's not a judicial process. It's not a federal criminal charge. But I say, why not read that to mean if you're impeached, meaning just in the House, in my view, you're no longer allowed to issue pardons. How about that? The power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. Let's say I just have that stupid interpretation. I mean, that's what happens with Federalist cases all the time. They just come up with a dumb interpretation and keep pressing until they get enough conservative idiot justices to say yes to it, like the idea that the Second Amendment affords you the opportunity to go about armed as an individual all the time, wherever you want. That used to be considered a very dumb and overbroad interpretation. Let's try it with this one. Okay, moving on, though. There has long been speculation that President Trump may exercise this power to pardon some of the Russia investigation characters, including Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, Jared Kushner, and possibly even himself. The pardon power is among the broadest of presidential powers, traditionally thought of that way anyway. As the Supreme Court noted in 1866 in Ex parte Garland, if granted before conviction, a pardon prevents any of the penalties and disabilities consequent upon conviction from attaching. If granted after conviction, it removes the penalties and disabilities and restores him to all his civil rights. The court added that the pardon power is not subject to legislative control. Congress can neither limit the effect of his pardon nor exclude from its exercise any class of offenders. The benign prerogative of mercy reposed in him, the president, cannot be fettered by any legislative restrictions. More recently, the court in its 1974 decision in Schick v. Reed stated that the president's pardon power, quote, flows from the Constitution alone, not any legislative enactments, and cannot be modified, abridged, or diminished by the Congress. While there are a handful of important Supreme Court decisions on the scope and effect of the pardon power, in the first instance, that scope and effect is determined by the executive branch itself. The Justice Department has issued many opinions about the president's pardon power. In recent decades, the Office of Legal Counsel issued these opinions. In earlier years, the Attorney General's office did so. The opinions presumptively bind the executive branch. However, issues related to a pardon might be subject to judicial review by courts, which are not bound by executive branch interpretations of the pardon power. In Part 1, oh my goodness, it's going to be long, below, we have collected and summarized the publicly available opinions most relevant to the Russia investigation. These opinions show that the executive branch interprets the president's pardon power to be extraordinarily broad in ways that might become relevant to the Mueller investigation. After briefly describing these opinions and their relevance in Part 1, we list in Part 2 all of the other published Justice Department pardon opinions with links. I think the scary stuff is right up top. Part 1 here. OLC pardon opinions potentially relevant to the Russia investigation. Ready? Whether the president may have access to grand jury material in the course of exercising his authority to grant pardons. A opinion issued in 2000. Think about that for just a second. The question before OLC was whether the Justice Department's pardoning power can access grand jury information protected by federal rules of criminal procedure, in particular Rule 6E, when making a pardon recommendation to the president. It concluded that the president, in the exercise of his pardon authority and responsibilities under Article 2, may request that the pardon attorney, who he's not using here, consider such information in a pardon recommendation if the president determines that his need for such information in considering that application outweighs the confidentiality interests embodied in Rule 6E. OLC reasoned that the application of Rule 6E in this context conflicts with the president's interest in having access to information that is legitimately in the possession of his subordinates and relevant to the exercise of his constitutionally enumerated and exclusive pardon power. OLC further ruled that the president may issue a standing request for certain grand jury material on particular issues that may be relevant to a pardon decision. This opinion would be relevant should President Trump seek to leverage the pardon power to examine grand jury material in the Russia investigation. If you didn't get the gobbledygook, if the president were to say or to make known in some way that I am considering pardoning some or all of the figures under investigation in the Mueller probe, he might in fact be entitled to say, that in furtherance of my interest in studying whether or not such pardons either will issue or should be issued, I'm going to study the question of whether or not these pardons are deserved. Could be the ruse, even though everybody knows that he just is going to issue them without studying them at all. But once he makes known that he's interested in studying the possibility of a pardon, in the ordinary course of things, he would be pardoning perhaps someone else other than himself, or someone involved in a crime that didn't inure to his benefit. And he may be saying, all right, listen, I may pardon this person, possibly even before trial, but I need to know whether this is a good idea or not, whether it's warranted or not, whether it really serves the interests of justice or mercy or not. And so I want access to secret grand jury information to which I would ordinarily not either have access, although I could always order it, but ordinarily I would stay out of such things. But because I'm considering a pardon here, I want to know, what am I getting myself caught up in? If I'm lobbied to pardon and I tend to agree, is there anything I should know about why this wouldn't be a very smart idea politically or otherwise? And it is the OLC's opinion that you could therefore say to your subordinates, give me the information that you collected for the grand jury and developed for the grand jury, which ordinarily wouldn't land on my desk, but it would be okay if it did. According to the OLC, although they probably, again, wrote this with the idea in mind that you would be examining somebody else's case, not your own. But it doesn't differentiate, maybe because nobody ever thought we would ever get to such a occasion, although really, honestly, with Richard Nixon in the background, I don't know why you wouldn't, or maybe because they fully envisioned that and went ahead with it anyway. I don't know. I don't know who wrote this and in what context, but in 2000, could be, and it could be that it was people thinking that maybe Clinton should have been able to do such a thing. I don't know. But the upshot of this here, if you still haven't figured it out, is once the president says, yeah, I'm thinking about a pardon and I want the grand jury material, he may or may not ever get around to seriously considering the pardon. But the mechanism that this thing puts in place is one that allows him to say, send me all the grand jury information on anything Mueller is doing. I want to read it. Because pardons, not because I want to know what's going on and I want to continue to obstruct justice so that it never has to be a pardon and I can just foul up the whole investigation. That would be bad. Another opinion, by the way, included in this, assertion of executive privilege with respect to clemency decisions. In 1999, OLC here addressed whether the president can assert executive privilege in response to subpoenas by Congress seeking documents and testimony concerning the president's pardon decisions. It concluded that he can do so since the documents and testimony concerned advice and deliberative communications that fall under the scope of executive privilege. In other words, if he were to say, I just read, or I just saw in the telly, or whatever, that they're going to indict me or everybody around me. Well, one, I'm going to pardon us, and I got to pardon us because I'm totally guilty. And if I go to trial, I'm going to be executed in this. I'm guilty of treason. So I'm going to pardon myself. Can Congress say, oh my God, you taped that? I need the tapes. We need to decide whether or not to impeach you. Sure, they can say that. Can the president say, I'm blocking your access to those tapes because executive privilege? Sure, he can say that. Does that matter? Well, this 1999 OLC opinion alleges that it does. Now, of course, it's only binding on the executive branch. And if you were to get to court and say, no, you got to settle this, if you could manage to get a court to say, it's not a political question, we will actually decide on this controversy, they may very well say, OLC memo, interesting, yes, persuasive, no, or at least binding, no, let's go ahead. But it's out there, and that's troublesome. There's another one here, effects of a presidential pardon, 1995. This opinion addressed many issues related to the pardon power, but the most relevant among them to current events is whether a pardon issued prior to conviction has the same effect as a pardon issued after conviction. Citing a long line of Justice Department opinions, as well as Garland, OLC concluded that a pardon removes all consequences of an offense, even where there has not yet been a conviction. OLC cited two famous precedents for this conclusion: Jimmy Carter's pardon of all those who avoided military service during the Vietnam War, and Andrew Johnson's offer of pardons to persons involved in secession who were willing to take the loyalty oath. Indeed, OLC noted that the vast majority of those pardoned had not been convicted of any crime. The opinion has relevance should President Trump wish to pardon someone under investigation by Mueller, prior to any indictment or conviction. There is the 1974 pardon of the president opinion. In this OLC opinion, it was addressed whether a president can pardon himself. Of course, we understand why that would be relevant. And there are a few others as well, and they're all pretty worrisome. And in case you're interested in doing some study of your own, Section 2 lists what they think are all of the Justice Department's publicly available pardon opinions in one convenient place so that you can panic yourself over the weekend or whenever you choose to read them. But a good point. And probably one we should all be aware of in advance of anything really serious happening. The one about his being able to leverage out the grand jury evidence, probably the most worrisome of the bunch. Okay, let's see. Other things that we might shoehorn in the few minutes before we leave. Interesting proceedings in the case against many of the protesters arrested during the inauguration in January of 2017, and a lot of cases being dismissed by for the reason of prosecutorial misconduct. I've yet to read the article on this one, but some really interesting implications here, both because the prosecutors apparently selectively edited some of the video that they intended to use as evidence, and that material was provided to them by James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, also very well known for editing their materials for dramatic impact. But the fact that those materials would be used by the prosecution and even further edited by the prosecution, and then that the prosecution would refuse to reveal that willingly until caught is pretty amazing all by itself. But an excellent observation by Malcolm Harris, author and interested party in following these proceedings, pointing out the strange partnership between the alt-right administration of Donald Trump and the alt-right activists of Project Veritas, pointing out the cops, actual state actors, need a warrant to enter private residences and spy on First Amendment activity, but Project Veritas doesn't. What do you call it, he asks, when the government outsources domestic surveillance to private goon squads to get around the Bill of Rights? I don't know what you call it, but of course it's actually something that we've considered in the past, both on the show and way back in the George W. Bush domestic surveillance days as well. I wondered the same thing about what would happen if you simply outsourced all of that work to non-governmental actors and the best and juiciest parts just happened to end up on your desk. Of course, we wondered the same thing in reverse about what would happen if Spanish authorities were to operate that surveillance and have their evidence developed and deposited on the desk of Robert Mueller as well. I don't know whether one is more troubling than the other, but we'll find out as we move forward. So I'll share with you. I do have an article here from Think Progress bringing us up to date. Bring you up to date when you read it over the weekend about what happened in this trial. Plenty more to get to, but no time to get to it. We'll return to all these subjects, of course, on Monday, and some of these will end up being the stories that fall by the wayside. But hopefully we'll have a relatively quiet weekend, I think. We can hope for that, and we'll be back on Monday to bring you more news and craziness. We still don't know where Melania Trump is. That's still hanging out there as well. And maybe we'll get some answers over the weekend, maybe not. All right. I think that is probably then where we will leave it at the moment. So you know about some of the new names that are likely to crop up if the weekend gets particularly crazy. And, let's see. Anything else pressing before we turn to what you'll get when, not if, but when you stay tuned here to Netroots Radio. Let's roll over there, too. And I'll bet that the upcoming menu of items for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy will serve as an excellent reminder of things we didn't get to today. Starting off on his Bistro Cafe, it's Dinesh D'Souza. How about that? His pardon would be a DM, direct message, I guess, to Michael Cohen if it hadn't been put on the public timeline instead. Then a Florida jury in court ruled that black lives don't matter. What do you know? When it awarded a grand total of $4 to the family of a black man gunned down by cops in his own garage. And then the judge reduced that to 4 cents. So you'll want to stay tuned for that story. Civil rights groups asked the DHS to reveal how they define black identity extremists. And Trump attacked the FBI for not doing the one thing that they actually did. What about even wider net? Well, you know that justice always casts a worldwide net. I got a little bit more for you after this.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Okay, let's see. Also coming up at the chef's table, as he calls it, where a disgraced former Trump appointee who was forced to resign in one of the most substantial Native American financial scandals of the past decade figures he now has the proper GOP credentials to run for Congress. And evidence mounts that vitamins might not do anything for your health.